Wow, the Denver Broncos just got some incredible news. Their injury report this late in the season is like nothing I've ever seen before. Coach Vance Joseph even highlighted the team's biggest weakness on defense and how they plan to fix it against the Cincinnati Bengals. If you're new here, I'm a huge Denver Broncos fan. Normally, I record in my man cave, but today I'm back home in Colorado, and honestly, I don't know why I ever left. By the way, if you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps me out. Now let's get into it. With just 2 weeks left in the NFL season, some teams, like the Detroit Lions, are struggling big time. Their injury report is massive. 23 players on IR. It's almost as long as Santa's naughty list. But here's the exciting part. Sean Payton has done an amazing job managing the Broncos' progress. Just look at our injury report from Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. It's shocking in the best way possible. Every single player who wasn't already on IR practiced yesterday. That's right, every eligible player showed up. This is fantastic news for a team hitting its stride at the perfect time. We could even clinch a playoff spot this Saturday. Depending on how things go, we might rest key players like Pat Surtain and Garrett Bolles on the final day of the season. There's still so much up in the air. We could end up with the 5th, 6th, or 7th seed in the playoffs. The possibilities are endless, and the excitement is through the roof. What's incredible about having a Week 14 bye is the timing. It gives the team 4 weeks to gear up before the real battle begins in the NFL playoffs. And here's the best part. The Broncos are getting healthy at just the right moment. The biggest highlight? Riley Moss is back. The great white hope himself is already proving to be one of the top 10 corners in the league. Pair him with Pat Surtain, and you've got a dream duo ready to shut down Jamar Chase and T. Higgins all game long. I can't believe we're this healthy so late in the season. It's almost unheard of. Another big win? Identifying and fixing our defensive struggles. Let's be honest, the Broncos' defense has faced challenges since Riley Moss got injured in the game against the Raiders. Remember when Anthony Richardson ran in a touchdown on the first drive and then disrespected us with the mile-high salute? That was tough to watch. After that, Jameis Winston and Justin Herbert both had their way with our defense. But here's the thing, solving a problem starts with recognizing it. Vance Joseph nailed it by identifying exactly what went wrong. He pointed out that by weeks 12 through 15, teams have enough game film to expose weak spots in our zone defense. The good news? We know the problem, and as they say, a problem well defined is already half solved. Now, with this clarity, the Broncos are in a great position to turn things around as the playoffs approach. With Riley Moss back, here's the best news. We don't have to rely on that weak zone defense anymore, the kind that Joe Burrow would tear apart with ease. Instead, we're returning to what we do best. Man-to-man football. Vance Joseph is planning to run cover 0, leaving Riley Moss and Pat Surtain in one-on-one matchups. These guys are more than capable, and with them locking down receivers, we'll be free to put pressure on Joe Burrow. This is exactly the strategy we need. Another issue the Broncos faced earlier in the season was poor preparation during the Jets' monsoon game. That day, the rain was so bad, the ball felt like a shot put, heavy and waterlogged. The Broncos weren't ready for those conditions because the equipment team didn't know it would rain, so they didn't bring the right footballs. But the team has learned from that mistake. This week, they've been practicing with soaked footballs, dunking them in water tubs to prepare for slippery conditions. Now, Bo Nix looks completely comfortable throwing wet footballs. It's a small adjustment, but it solves a huge problem. Looking at the bigger picture, the Broncos have already identified their 2 biggest challenges: defensive strategy and preparation for tough weather, and they found solid solutions for both. That's a massive win. As for limiting one of the best receivers in the game, Pat Surtain's numbers this season are absolutely incredible. He's putting up stats worthy of Defensive Player of the Year consideration, even from a neutral observer. With him and Riley Moss leading the charge, the defense is shaping up to be unstoppable. Even Broncos haters have to admit how incredible Pat Surtain and this defense are right now. Here's a mind-blowing stat. Pat Surtain has more interceptions than he's allowed passes over 20 yards. Let that sink in. And get this, opposing quarterbacks have a lower QBR, quarterback rating, when throwing at Pat Surtain than if they just spiked the ball straight into the ground. Why? Because Surtain turns their throws into interceptions more often than they result in incompletions. So, Joe Burrow, you might want to think twice before testing him. But hey, if you're feeling brave, go ahead and see what happens. Just look at Surtain's track record. Against DK Metcalf, before Metcalf got hurt in Seattle, Surtain held him to only 37 yards, and that's despite some questionable offensive pass interference calls that left me fuming. He also shut down George Pickens, who just tore up the Kansas City Chiefs yesterday. And don't forget what he did to Mike Evans, who's having another monster season with over 1,000 yards. Pat Surtain is already elite, and with Riley Moss back as his partner, this duo is unstoppable. The Broncos' secondary is stronger than ever, and that's fantastic news. Now, let's talk about the Bengals. Sure, they're on a hot streak, and people are hyping them up as potential Super Bowl contenders. But here's the thing. When you really dig into it, the Bengals haven't beaten a single good offensive team. That's something to keep in mind as we head into this matchup. Let's take a closer look at who the Bengals have actually beaten this season. Their wins have come against quarterbacks like Daniel Jones, who's not playing anymore, Andy Dalton, Deshaun Watson, also out, Gardner Minshew, Cooper Rush, Will Levis, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson. None of these guys are currently starting. Now compare that to Bo Nix. By most advanced stats, he's performing at a top 15 level this season, way better than any quarterback the Bengals have faced. That's great news for us because this Bengals defense is already struggling, and Bo Nix is about to give them their toughest challenge yet. Here's another interesting stat: the number of sacks a quarterback takes. Leading the league in this unfortunate category is rookie Caleb Williams, who has been sacked 60 times, even though he's in one of the best situations a rookie could ask for. Sean Payton has made it clear. His biggest pet peeve is quarterbacks taking sacks because it kills the chances of scoring on that drive. And guess who's in the top 10 for most sacks taken? Joe Burrow. Now, imagine Burrow trying to find open receivers while Riley Moss and Pat Surtain are locking them down. It's not going to happen. On top of that, our pass rush is on fire. Drew Sanders is back, Jonathan Cooper is closing in on a 10-sack season, Nick Bonitto is playing lights out, and Zach Allen is dominating up the middle. Malcolm Roach and DJ Jones are also stepping up big time in the middle of the defense. With all this firepower, this Broncos defense is ready to make Joe Burrow's life miserable on game day. I feel way more confident about the Broncos beating the Bengals this week than I did about beating the Chargers on a short week. Remember, Sean Payton chose that short week for a reason, to focus this team during the Christmas break and prepare them for the playoffs. And now, everything is on the line. If the Broncos win this game, we're officially in the playoffs. Here's the playoff breakdown. If we win this week, we're guaranteed at least the 7th seed, with a chance to climb as high as the 5th seed. If we win the next 2 games, including one against a Chiefs team that might rest Patrick Mahomes, he's expecting a baby soon, and if the Chargers lose 1 game while the Bengals beat the Steelers, we could head into Houston for week 1 of the playoffs. Who wouldn't want that? Even if things play out differently, there's still a path to the 6th seed. Worst case, if the Chargers win out and we only win 1 more game, we'd land the 7th seed. And here's the best part. Even if we somehow drop the next 2 games, there's still a slim chance at the 7th seed. But let's be real. Bo Nix has never lost 3 games in a row in his entire career. You really think he's going to start now, with everything on the line? If you believe that, I've got an island in the Caribbean to sell you. I've got a 17-hour road trip home with my family tomorrow. So if you spot me on I-80, honk and give me the believe sign. Let me know your score predictions in the comments. Personally, I think the Broncos take this 134-28, and we lock in our spot in the playoffs. Let's make it happen, Broncos country.